Welcome to 30 Minutes of VOA Learning English, the voice of America's information service for people learning English. Join us now for the Health Report and Explorations, coming up after As It Is.
Welcome to As It Is from VOA Learning English. I'm Mario Ritter. In the last 2 weeks, international leaders have criticized trials of activists in Beijing. Today, we hear some of the details of the cases. Then, we hear about proposed talks between mainland China and Taiwan. Activists on trial in China and China-Taiwan talks are next on As It Is. China's Communist Party is continuing its campaign against government critics. Last week, a court in Beijing found 2 more activists guilty of the charge of gathering a crowd to disturb public order. Steve Ember has more.
Ho Xin and Yuan Dong are members of the civic group known as the New Citizens Movement. The group has been calling on government officials to make their financial information public. It has also called for equal rights to education for the children of China's millions of migrant workers. Yuan Dong was sentenced to 1.5 years in prison for taking part in public demonstrations. Ho Xin was not sentenced to time in prison because her crime was considered less serious. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Beijing Intermediate Court sentenced the creator of the New Citizens Movement, Xu Zhiyong, to 4 years in prison. The 40-year-old lawyer was found guilty of the same charge of gathering crowds to disrupt public order. He is one of 7 members of the movement accused of taking part in 5 incidents. Lawyers for the accused have argued that they should all be tried together, but legal officials have brought separate cases against each. In addition to measures against corruption, the New Citizens Movement has called on China's provinces to let children attend school and take college entrance examinations where their parents live and work. The country has had a family registration or hukou system in place since the 1950s. The policy limited the movement of families around China for many years. But in recent years, a mass migration of rural people to the cities has caused families to be separated because of the hukou system. The New Citizens Movement has called for reforms to the system. Many of China's provinces have promised reforms, but not Beijing and Shanghai. Members of the group also call for good governance practices and observance of the law. Many nations have condemned the sentencing of New Citizens Movement members and its founder, Xu Zhiyong. Daniel Delk is with the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. He spoke about the recent court decision involving New Citizens Movement member Yuan Dong.
We're deeply disappointed that Yuan Dong, a good governance advocate, has been convicted and sentenced to 1.5 years in prison. We are concerned that today's conviction, like that of legal scholar and rights advocate Xu Zhiyong just earlier this week, is retribution for his public campaign to expose official corruption and for the peaceful expression of his views.
The U.S. State Department says it is concerned that the sentences represent punishment against the activists for the public campaign against corruption. China's foreign ministry reacted to world criticism of the trials by saying that other countries should not interfere in China's issues. Xu Zhiyong's lawyer has said he will appeal the court's decision. I'm Steve Ember.
Next, Taiwan says it will hold high-level talks with China this month. The two sides are likely to talk about issues related to China's goal of unifying the two sides. June Sims has this report.
Taiwan said last week that its China policy expert, Wang Yuqi, would meet with China's Vice Foreign Minister, Zhang Zhejun, in the cities of Nanjing and Shanghai from February 11th to the 14th. Wang Yuqi spoke to reporters in Taipei last week. He said the talks would not deal with sensitive political issues, but he said they are aimed at improving communication to avoid misunderstandings. He added that economic ties would be a main subject. The two ministers are also expected to discuss establishing some kind of diplomatic offices in each other's area. Such offices would service travel by the rising number of visitors between the mainland and Taiwan. Nathan Liu is a professor of international affairs at Mingchuan University in Taiwan. He says these meetings could offer a chance to discuss difficult political issues. However, he notes public opinion on both sides is important. Some opposition lawmakers in Taiwan have already expressed concern about the trip. Hong Sai-long is a top member of the opposition Democratic Progressive Party. He says the Taiwanese people are very concerned about human rights in China. Ruling party lawmaker Lin Defu said negotiator Wang Yuqi should speak with lawmakers before his trip. He said the negotiator should explain the purpose of his trip and take suggestions from political parties. Mainland China and Taiwan have had separate governments since the Chinese Civil War that ended in 1949. China claims rule over the island and has threatened to use force to bring the two sides together. In 2008, however, the mainland and Taiwan negotiated trade and investment deals, which seemed to weaken the conflict. The public in democratic Taiwan has long distrusted the idea of talks with its communist neighbor. Last year, however, Chinese President Xi Jinping urged Taiwan to start political talks. China's Taiwan Affairs Office called the meeting an important move to develop relations between the two sides. I'm June Sims.
That's as it is for today. Thanks for joining us. Have a question or comment about our show? We would love to hear from you. Email us at learningenglish@voanews.com, or you can visit our website at learningenglish.voanews.com and click on Contact Us. We are also on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, iTunes, and Twitter at VOA Learning English. VOA World News is coming up at the top of the hour Universal Time. I'm Mario Ritter. for as it is. I hope you will join me again next week.
The Health Report is next, followed by Explorations. You can read and listen to our programs and download MP3s at learningenglish.voanews.com. You can learn with us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at VOA Learning English.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Some kinds of mental skills naturally decrease as people get older. Yet research seems to show that some training can improve such skills. A recently published study also appears to demonstrate that the good effects of training can last for many years after that training has ended. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland wanted to learn how long memory and thinking skills would last in older people who trained to keep them. The people were part of a 10-year research project. They were taught methods meant to improve their memory, thinking, and ability to perform everyday tasks. More than 2,800 volunteered for the study, called ACTIVE, short for Advanced Training for Independent and Vital Elderly. Most started when they were more than 70 years old. The volunteers took one of several short training classes meant to help them keep their mental abilities. One class trained participants in skills including how to remember word lists. Another group trained in reasoning. A third group received help with speed of processing, speed of receiving and understanding information. A fourth group, the control group, did not get any training. Earlier results had established that the training helped the participants for up to 5 years. Now, lead study writer George Reebok says the research showed most of the training remained effective a full 10 years later. Professor Reebok and his team found that the people trained in reasoning and speed of processing did better on tests than the control group.
We were wondering whether those effects would endure over time and would still be there 10 years following the training, and in fact, that's exactly what we found.
The effect on memory, however, seemed not to last as long. Still, the older people in any of the three classes generally reported less difficulty in performing daily activities than the control group. The total training time for the older people was between 10 and 15 hours. Professor Reebok and his team are now considering ways to provide such training for lower cost.
We are trying to make the training more broadly available. For example, we have a grant right now from the National Institute on Aging to try to make a web-based version of the active memory training and put the training online.
One question still to be studied is how only a few hours of training can still be effective after 10 years. The study appears in the Journal of the American Geriatrics Society. And that's the VOA Learning English Health Report. You can read more health reports on our website, learningenglish.voanews.com, where you will also find lessons to help you learn everyday American English. I'm Christopher Cruz.
I'm Barbara Klein.
And I'm Steve Ember with Explorations in VOA Special English. A blue hole is a flooded sea cave with a hole that opens up at the land's surface. These cave systems form in carbonate rock, often on islands. Some blue holes have very special rock formations and water chemistry. Far below sea level, they contain some of the harshest environments on Earth, with no oxygen and no light. Yet these areas are filled with life forms that have adapted to the extreme conditions. Information gathered from these blue holes is helping scientists to increase their understanding of biology, archaeology, and geology. But exploring these blue hole environments brings danger as well as discovery.
Blue holes get their name from the color some have when seen from the air. The color is usually a reflection of the sky on the water. But not all of these cave systems have blue surfaces. Some contain dark or muddy water. Blue holes are the result of erosion in which water breaks down rock. Rain falling thousands of years ago contained chemicals which slowly wore away at the limestone landmass. These holes later filled with seawater as the sea level changed. The rising and falling of sea levels and the mixture of salt and fresh water further wore away at these cave formations. Blue holes are vertical caves, but they can also have horizontal cave formations that may be hundreds of meters long.
These flooded cave systems can be found in the ocean or they can be found inland. Ocean caves are affected by tides, so they always have water movement. But blue holes on land are very still. They have several layers of water, chemicals, and bacteria. The top layer of fresh water comes from rainfall. This layer acts like a cap on top of the layered mixture and keeps out oxygen from the atmosphere. The fresh water floats on a denser layer of salt water. Underneath this is a layer of poisonous hydrogen sulfide produced by bacteria living in the water. Underneath this layer is anoxic seawater, water that does not contain any oxygen.
Kenny Broad is an anthropologist at the University of Miami in Florida. He studies the effects of climate change and human understanding of its risks. He has spent several years exploring underwater caves in the Bahamas. Here, Mr. Broad discusses his many cave explorations during a talk at the National Geographic Society in Washington, D.C.
Underwater caves are probably, I'd argue, one of the least understood ecosystems on the planet. One of the reasons they're one of the least understood, they're one of the least explored. And they're one of the last places where you still physically have to go there. You can't send in a submarine or remote operated vehicle, some autonomous machine. You need to go there.
Kenny Broad helped organize the Bahamas Blue Hole Expedition. In 2009, a team of scientists spent 2 months researching blue holes on Bahamian islands, including Andros and Abaco. The trip received financial support from the National Geographic Society.
One reason blue holes have not been fully explored is that they can be extremely dangerous. There are many safety rules that divers must follow to help ensure their survival. First, divers must have training and experience to swim in these caves. Divers who explore a cave for the first time must establish a thin rope called a guideline. This line helps them to safely enter and exit the cave without getting lost. Divers must also bring several light sources in case one fails. They also must bring more than one set of breathing equipment in case one device fails. And they must pay careful attention to their air supply. The rule they follow is to use a third of their air to enter the cave, a third to exit, and a third for emergencies.
There are many difficulties involved in diving in blue holes. In some blue holes, divers must quickly swim through a layer of hydrogen sulfide to reach the horizontal caves further down. This gas causes itchy skin, dizziness, and in high enough quantities, death. Or divers might face extremely strong currents that can suck them into an opening. If they are not careful with their movements, they can disrupt an area of a cave, creating explosions of silt, which makes it impossible to see clearly. Kenny Broad shows a video of a diver forcing his body through a very narrow, rocky opening.
It's a mental game. It's not a physical game. This isn't macho, and it's not thrill-seeking. It's more about keeping your breath rate under control.
For most explorers, though, the possibility of discovery in these cave environments makes the experience worth the risk.
You can jump into what looks like an insignificant little hole in the ground and come out with information that's of value to many different disciplines.
Scientists are interested in these caves because oxygen-free conditions there are similar to those on Earth long ago, before oxygen existed on our planet.
What was life like? And when I say the ancient oceans, maybe a more dramatic way to phrase this question is, how did life form? I'm talking about life 3.5 billion years ago.
He says the microbes that were present then did not leave a clear fossil record for scientists to study. So studying the organisms in these oxygen-free caves gives clues about the past.
So what happens here is we have a modern-day analogy for what the oceans were like in terms of both the chemistry and the biology.
Experts are not only interested in life on our planet. Astrobiologists can compare information about these organisms and their environment to other oxygen-free environments, like those in space. They study these extreme conditions to understand how and where life might exist on other planets. Larger organisms are equally interesting to scientists. Most are colorless and cannot see. For example, the Augustocaris cave shrimp is only about 2.5 centimeters long. It has no color except an area of its digestive system. Then there is the remipede. Some scientists describe it as a living fossil. It has changed very little over the past 300 million years.
Blue holes also permit scientists to study climate change over thousands of years. They want to understand what those changes could mean in the future. Some of the horizontal caves have calcite formations called stalagmites and stalactites. They formed little by little tens of thousands of years ago when sea levels dropped. Scientists can study these formations and map out the climate conditions present during every year of their growth.
Because blue holes contain no oxygen, they also protect ancient objects from the destruction of time. For example, divers in Sanctuary Blue Hole on the island of Andros in the Bahamas found the ancient bones of native Lucayan tribe members. Experts are not sure whether this tribe placed bodies in caves as part of burial ceremonies or for other reasons. Animal remains are also preserved in excellent condition. Divers in Sawmill Sink on Abaco Island found the 3,000-year-old remains of a Cuban crocodile. This kind of crocodile has long disappeared from the Bahamas. They also found some ancient turtle skeletons. They were so well preserved, they still had pieces of soft tissue.
The Bahamas may have more than 1,000 blue holes, but only about 200 have been discovered. This includes the world's deepest known blue hole, called Dean's Blue Hole on Long Island. It measures 202 meters in depth. Kenny Broad and his team spent time talking with native Bahamians to ask them if they knew where the team could find other blue holes. He says younger generations are generally not aware of such caves, but their parents know about them and once used them.
What's interesting, though, when you talk to these folks' parents, they were keenly aware of these holes because they use them as their source of drinking water. They use them for all sorts of medicinal reasons for the plants that grew around them.
Many blue holes have become areas where people throw away waste. But these actions are polluting an important source of fresh water. Part of Kenny Broad's goal is to raise awareness about these underground areas so local communities will take better care in protecting them. Another threat these cave systems face is rising sea levels. As sea levels rise, the careful balance of chemistry and nature in these caves could be destroyed.
Kenny Broad says these blue holes must be protected for several reasons. They are important for environmental and scientific discoveries. These caves also give a few explorers an extraordinary chance to see life in a beautiful and strange environment that is like no other on Earth.
This program was written and produced by Dana DeMange. I'm Steve Ember.
And I'm Barbara Klein. You can see pictures of blue holes at voaspecialenglish.com. Join us again next week for explorations in VOA Special English.